Hey, what's up, YouTube? This is Freedom Voice. I want to go over this document, Trapped in a Black Box, Growing Terrorism, Watch Listing, and Everyday Policing. This is a very, very good article, and it basically goes over the whole watch listing program here in the United States. It's put out by the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. And looking at the table of content, I'm going to try to break this video up into three segments. First is the executive summary in the background. That's going to be on this video. And then another video is going to be nominations and encounters with law enforcement. And then maybe a third video, which is going to be probably the most important of the three, is going to go over the silent hits and redress. When you get to the silent hits, actually the whole document clearly spells out the targeted individual program. But when you get to 5 and 6, silent hits and redress, I mean, if you can't see that that's the targeted individual program, then I really don't know what to say. But I mean, when you read through this document, it really speaks for itself. In the last 15 years, the U.S. government has drastically expanded a consolidated watch listing system that includes hundreds of thousands of individuals based on secret evidence. And I want to kind of underscore that or underline that. Everything that has gone on regarding the whole watch listing program sort of started in 2001. And this document was written in 2016. Now, skipping down to this area where it says yet a key component, it goes on to say, and the whole thing is a very good read, but there's only certain portions I can get to. Yet a key component of the watch listing system has received far less scrutiny. The known or suspected terrorist or KST file, which is maintained by the F-Boys and is accessible to federal, state, and local law enforcement entities. Now, every time I mention this, I'm going to say the F-Boys because, you know, I don't want this video flagged, and I do want to get the information out. I just want to try to keep down as much harassment and as much problems as possible to try to get the information out. So the KST, basically the KST file is maintained at the federal, state, and local law enforcement level nationwide through the NCIC, which is the National Crime Information Center. Now, skipping down here, you're going to hear me refer to, or the document's going to refer to the KST file a lot. So just know that that's the known or suspected terrorist file. It says the KST file is a successor of what was known until 2009 as the Violent Gangs and Terrorist Organization file, whereof the VGTOF contained fewer than 10,000 terrorism-related entities in 2000 entries in 2003. KST contains hundreds of thousands of entries today. Now that's important. I mean, this was written in 2016, and they're saying that the KST file contains hundreds of thousands of entries. You can imagine where it is today. To be sure, law enforcement agencies have a legitimate interest in coordinating efforts to locate people for whom arrest warrants are outstanding. Today, though, KST is part of a vast system of domestic. Now, this is a key sentence here. The KST is part of a vast system of domestic surveillance of people whom law enforcement labels suspect based on vague and loose criteria. So the KST file is largely composed not of people that commit crimes, but of people whom law enforcement consider to be, suspects. And this is basically a surveillance tool. That's what the whole KST file is all about, surveillance. It goes on to say, with serious constitutional privacy implications for those who are included in the file. Such individuals may be stigmatized as potential terrorists and are vulnerable to increased law enforcement scrutiny. often without knowing that they are on a secret watch list. Now, again, we emphasize increased law enforcement scrutiny. We know as TIs, that's basically the TI program, right? But it goes on to say, often without knowing that they are on a secret watch list or without a meaningful way to confirm or contest their inclusion. Now, I'm going to highlight this area here, this section here, because this is, in fact, the problem with the whole program, is people cannot contest their entry if you're on a watch list, and targeted individuals can tell that they're on some sort of list. It's very obvious. It goes on to say here, the ACLU obtained information from the F-Boys about the VGTOF KST file through a Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, request and subsequent lawsuit. Although much about the current size and operation of KST remains secret from the public. All right, remember, the KST file is secret from the public. All right, and you're going to know as we continue reading, it's going to not only be secret from the public, but it's going to be secret from law enforcement as well. All right, so it goes on to say the more than 13,000 pages we now have covering a 5-year period from December 2003 to December 2008 offer key insight into the workings of this sprawling government database. So the KST file, friends, it's a secret document, or it's a secret file. It's based on surveillance. It is what they call a sprawling or large database. Further information we analyzed in this report came from another FOIA suit brought by the Electronic Privacy Information Center, Inspector General reports, and the government's watch listing guidance leaked to the media in August 2014. So the information in this document that spells out the KST file, watch listing in policing today, came from factual, detailed FOIAs, as well as lawsuits, as well as information that was leaked as far back as August 2014 to the media. This is factual information that I'm sharing. I want to continue reading here. This report presents an analysis of the most important findings from these documents and other resources which raise serious concerns about the fairness, accuracy, and effectiveness of the KST file. And that's what we're pointing out here. At the bottom there, it says the number of, and I put targeted individuals, has increased in the KST file, has increased exponentially from over 13,000 to, it has ballooned to well over 272,000 in 2008. So this file is growing by leaps and bounds, over 50,000 entries per year. That's a lot of people. Now, I'm going to do another video at a later time entitled The Targeted Individual is a Cash Cow, because that is the reason why this list, I believe, is growing. And again, this is from the document entitled Trapped in a Black Box, Growing Terrorism, Watch Listing in Everyday Policing. It's put out by the ACLU. You can find it online if you Google search it. But this is their finding. This is the result of their finding. It says, such dramatic growth does not reflect a commensurate increase in terrorist activity inside the United States during that time. In fact, terrorist activity in the United States since 2001 has been historically low and declining. Okay, and I want to emphasize that. Terrorism activity in the United States since 2001 has been historically low and declining. Yet this list, the KST file, is growing by over 50,000 per year. That is the reason why I'm going to do another video entitled Targeted Individuals, the Cash Cow, because each and every TI, each and every person that goes on that list, there are people from the top down that are getting paid for all of the people who are entered on that list. There has to be surveillance set up. There has to be a whole new agenda set up for this person who is suspected to be a terrorist. Whether they're guilty or not, whether they have probable cause or not, these individuals are set up and they're framed to be terrorists. And that's what this list, that's what this document is bringing out. And it's a major violation of human rights, major violation of the Constitution. I'm going to keep reading here. This really gets into detail on how people are nominated. It gets into detail on why people are nominated. It gets into detail on, because it's put out by the American Civil Liberties Union. So it gets into all of the infractions against the Constitution that threaten the liberties of individuals in the United States. And I'm blowing the whistle on this. This is very, very telling and very revealing, this entire document. It says the document raises serious questions about the accuracy of many of the records in the KST file. All right. So there are a lot of questions that have come up since this lawsuit, since the FOIA. And it has to do with the accuracy of the records. It says the FOIA documents indicate that the F-boys long lack sufficient safeguards for new entries to the file, increasing the risk that innocent individuals would be placed in it and retained there indefinitely. Now, that is startling to know that innocent people can be placed into the KST file and they can remain there indefinitely. Again, spelling out the fact that when you follow the money trail, you realize why people are being targeted, why people are being gang stalked, especially innocent civilians. Although the process has been more centralized over time, the current system lacks adequate substantive oversight for existing entries and utilizes a low reasonable suspicion evidentiary standard that is subject to numerous exceptions. It's subject to numerous exceptions. Now, as I scroll down here, I want to read this portion here. It says the primary purpose of the KST file is not law enforcement. Now, I want to emphasize that. The primary purpose of the KST file, which is basically a government watch listing file, is not about law enforcement, but it's about surveillance and tracking of individuals for indefinite periods. All right, so it's about surveillance. It's not about law enforcement. It would be legitimate for law enforcement to create a list of individuals for whom arrest warrants have been issued, but such individuals constitute a minuscule percent of the overall number of records in the file. So of all the number, if you take the 272,000 people in 2008, a very small percentage of the 272,000 in 2008 were individuals that had arrest warrants or that committed a crime. It's about surveillance. Goes on to say police encounters with others in the file almost never result in arrest and are not intended to do so. Rather, the encountering officer is instructed to relay information about the watch list individual to the F-boys without revealing to the individual that she has been watch list or that information is being gathered. Now, I want to emphasize this. When you encounter an officer as a TI, immediately the information is passed on to the F-boys without you even knowing that you're being watch list. This is what the ACLU is saying in this document. And they're going on to say that, you know, such information is being gathered and communicated. What information? It goes on to say the information that's being gathered and communicated, that information can include anything that the officer might glean during the encounter, such as, notice this, the vehicle information, number one. Number two, travel plans and history. Number three, the identities and other details of family members and companions. So the information that's being passed on to the F-boys includes vehicle information of the TI, travel plans and history, the identity and family members and the companion, whether you have a girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, whatever the case may be, whoever is your companion, that information is also being passed over to the F-boys. This is startling, guys. I mean, this is an egregious breach of freedom of civil liberties. I don't know how tax-paying Americans can sit back and allow a program such as this to go on without somebody blowing the whistle and saying, hey, time out. This is a violation of our freedom, violation of human rights, violation of the Constitution. You know, for a person to go on a list and for them to track that person, getting vehicle information, travel plan, history, identities, details about family and companion and all this, and passing it over to the F-boys without the person even knowing that they're on this list, that their information is being passed on to the F-boys, is quite startling. It's amazing. It's shocking to know that we've come to a time such as this in America. And the fact that there are people, boots on the ground, that are following these TIs and alerting the F-boys. I want to keep reading here. It says the FBI and other agencies. Now, I'm going to cross out other government agencies and put the fusion centers. I'm going to do another video on the fusion centers as well, because there's a lot of information on the internet about that. But it says the F-boys and other government fusion centers use silent hits to track encounters with a watch list person without alerting frontline law enforcement officers. Okay? During such encounters, the F-boys receives an automatic notification of the encounter, while the frontline officer's search of the individual's name and biometric information yields no indication of the individual's watch list status. Did you get that, friends? When you encounter as a TI, when you encounter law enforcement, the F-boys automatically get a notification of every encounter without even the law enforcement knowing about it. And while the law enforcement is taking information such as your name and your biometric information, that information is being passed on as well. It goes on to say, the F-boys document from 2009 showed that the use of the silent hit system became increasingly widespread, and such routine use underscores that the KST file is principally a domestic intelligence gathering tool, not a means of locating and apprehending criminals. And that's the reason why I'm doing this video. That's the reason why I'm speaking out, friends, because this KST file, which is a watch list file, is just about domestic intelligence gathering. This is very, very important, friends. Very important, not only to the TI, but to the person out there who just maintains, a tax-paying free life. This is very crucial. Now, again, this comes from the ACLU. This is their documentation. I didn't write this. This is online. You can search it online. You can get this information if you just search it out online. The American Civil Liberties Union, they prepared this document. It's about 36 pages long. And we're just looking at the first two chapters here. Now, once a person is on the KST file, and their information is being gathered and submitted to the F-boys, do you have any right of redress? Notice the next portion here. It says redress for the individuals who are erroneously placed on the KST file is essentially non-existent. So you have no redress. You have no means of contesting your name on the KST file, right? This document goes on to say that the F-Boys' longstanding policy is to neither confirm nor deny that an individual is on a terrorism watch list. So you can be on a terrorism watch list and not even know you're on the watch list. All your information can be passed on to the F-Boys, as well as other government agencies like fusion centers and so on and so forth. You could be followed by people in the community. You could be harassed by people in the community and not even know why, not even be able to contest why, not even be able to understand how you can get off the list, have no right or ability to be able to get off the list. Someone's paying for this. Someone has instituted this program for the purpose of tracking innocent people, and someone's reaping benefits, financial benefits from it, this program. Now, moving on to the next page, it says here, in order to not to alert the individual of the possibility of pending investigation, the officers are instructed not to reveal to the individual that they are on a terrorism watch list or terrorist watch list. Even if, as often happens, individuals come to suspect that they have been placed in the KST file, the F-Boys has not instituted a process through which they can contest that placement and clear their names. The KST file is essentially a black box, friends. That's why I titled this video, The TI Program is a Black Box. The TI program is a black box, because it says here, the last sentence here, and I'm gonna stop here, but it says here, the KST file is essentially a black box, an opaque and expanding accumulation of names for the purpose of profit. For the purpose of profit. That spells corruption. The KST file is essentially, friends, a black box. And when you get your name on the KST file, whether you committed a crime or not, whether you're a terrorist or not, whether you even own a firearm or not, it doesn't matter, because somebody's getting paid to not only surveil you, but someone's getting paid to follow you, to harass you, to turn you into a terrorist, to justify being on the KST file. And that's what's happening to most targeted individuals. And by the way, it's a black box with no bottom. Because once you get placed on the file, you get in the box. There's no bottom. You just fall down lower and lower and lower. You lose your job. You lose your friends. You lose your family. You lose your reputation. You lose your innocency. You lose your mind if you're not careful. That's why, friends, I want to tell you, those of you that are TIs and those of you that have been placed on this file, unless you know Jesus as your Lord and Savior, there is no hope. Jesus is the only way out of this black box that someone has deemed necessary for free civil liberty Americans. Again, this document was put out by the ACLU. It's entitled Trapped in a Black Box, Growing Terrorism and Watchlisting and Everyday Policing. I'm going to move on to another video here. This is Trey Gowdy contesting the terrorism watch list. Listen up, friends, to what Trey Gowdy says.
Let me ask you another question about the terrorism list. What process is afforded a U.S. citizen, not someone who's overstayed a visa, not someone who crossed the border without permission, but an American citizen? What process is currently afforded an American citizen before they go on that list?
I'm sorry. There's not a process afforded the citizen prior to getting on the list. There is a process should someone feel they are unduly placed on the list.
Yes, there is. And when I say process, I'm actually using half of the term due process, which is a phrase we find in the Constitution, that you cannot deprive people of certain things without due process. So I understand Mr. Good's idea, which is wait until your right has been taken from you, and then you can petition the government to get it back. I understand that that's his idea. My question is, can you name another constitutional right that we have that is chilled until you find out it's chilled, and then you have to petition the government to get it back? Is that true with the First Amendment?
Sir, there are strict criteria before
That's
anybody
not
gets
my
up
question,
on the
ma'am.
list.
That is not my question. My question is, what process is afforded a United States citizen before that person's constitutional right is infringed? Then he's fine with doing it with the Second Amendment. My question is, how about the First? How about we not let them set up a website or a Google account? How about we not let them join the church until they can petition government to get off the list? How about not get a lawyer? How about the Sixth Amendment? How about you can't get a lawyer until you petition the government to get off the list? Or my favorite, how about the Eighth Amendment? We're going to subject you to cruel and unusual punishment until you petition the government to get off the list. Is there another constitutional right that we treat the same way for American citizens that we do the Second Amendment? Can you think of one? Can you think of one?
I don't have an answer for you, sir.